Well, my name's Nicole Martin. I work over on the lower campus. I'm working with both preschool and lower school. And we're gonna tell you a little bit about the frontier and what's happened, but Kate?
Yes, and I'm Kate Canady. I'm the preschool director, and I have been at Mount Vernon for 12 years, and so I got to see the playground before it was the frontier and watch it be redesigned, and then again watch it go through another little bit of a redesign in this current moment. So I've seen the frontier and our outdoor play space through lots of different phases.
How many of you were here in preschool? Raise your hand high. 1, 2, 3. Oh, wow, okay.
Surprised.
Not very many. Awesome. Well, would you like us to start with kind of what happened?
Yeah, I think start at the beginning. They have a little bit of context for it, but I think hearing it from you is probably important.
So I think maybe we'll start at the beginning, which was Mount Vernon used to have a playground just like any other playground at any other school. It had the monkey bars, it had the swings, and just like any other playground at any other school, we had broken arms every year because of monkey bars. That's just kind of a standard thing that happens. And over time, we realized that our playground didn't match the innovation that Mount Vernon is known for. And so we did a complete redesign of the space. We opened it up and we put in a basically state-of-the-art natural playground. And there's lots of things that we can tell you about that at another time, but that's kind of what happened. And it has been an absolute beautiful perk at the school. Kids use it from preschool through grade 1 or 2, depending on the year. And it's been that moment where we take admissions tours. We have meetings out there sometimes. We do parent university meetings out there. And then the city of Sandy Springs came along, and Kate, why don't you kind of take over from here?
Yeah, absolutely. So raise your hand if you've noticed the construction going on. Okay, we all have. Well, it has probably impacted you all, but it's really, really impacted lower campus because they are widening Johnson Ferry and putting a cut through between Mount Vernon and Johnson Ferry Road, between our school and the Sandy Springs Library. And so in order to widen the road, they had to cut into our frontier space. So we lost a really big section of our frontier. And through the construction, we've had days where we can't even be outside because the machinery is too close to the fence. And so we've tried to problem solve losing square footage by opening up another section. If you're facing the frontier with the building behind you, there's a new area that we've kind of enclosed to gain back some square footage. But the biggest impact has been that we don't have as much space, and we don't have some of the things that we used to have in the other space, like trees to climb, bushes to play in. We've lost some of those really fun aspects of our frontier that the kids really enjoyed because of this loss of square footage.
Some of the construction that happened, they took down the trees, not on our side of the fence, but on the other property side of the fence, but that was our shade as well. So it was this gorgeous, like, nature-filled space, and when they came along to cut the road in, they cut down every single one of the trees. So it looks like the whole space looks and feels different now because of that.
And our kiddos repeatedly say the area that we lost, we had these beautiful azalea bushes, and the kids, their favorite game was to play family in those bushes. Those were their forts. And right now, they don't have a space to play that game. And like Nicole said, we really believe in our old frontier, our old playground. Had monkey bars, which is great for gross motor skills that we need to develop in our kiddos, but it doesn't really necessarily give them as much mental stimulation. They don't really have to do a lot of planning when they're doing monkey bars. It's just a repetitive experience, whereas climbing a tree is a totally different experience every time you do it. You have to do a lot of planning around how to climb, and so we could still do the climbing gross motor stuff in the trees that we would have done on the monkey bars years ago. But now we've lost those trees, so we don't even have anywhere for them to do that fun climbing that they were seeking out and really enjoying in our old space because the trees have been removed.
Questions? What was your name?
I'm Henry.
Henry.
Like instead of like all the bushes, like were there like any like structures I removed and you are always with the kids, like where like a lot like people who are returning to the structures, were they like upset, like were they like
Yeah.
where they're like, really distraught about it.
That's
Can you all hear the question in the back?
Yeah, that's a great question. We did lose our big slide. That was one of the things that was a big loss for us. Was we had 2 slides on the Frontier. We had a big slide and a little slide. And along the big slide were big rock boulders that the kids could climb up and then go down the slide. And so the kids are really feeling the loss of that structure. That's a structure that we lost, but in addition to structures, we also lost those azalea bushes that were not necessarily a structure, but they served a big function for our kiddos' play. And that was their houses, their little forts, as well as the climbing trees. We do have 2 climbing structures out there, but like I said, about the monkey bars, there's not as much motor planning that has to happen, so it's not as satisfying for the kiddos because they're just climbing a ladder. It's not necessarily all the mental stimulation of the challenge of climbing a tree.
What's something from the old Frontier that you would like to see again in the new Frontier based off of the space and the budget that we have to redesign it?
Great question. I think that this is a great thing to ask the kids as well. If you have an opportunity to come over and observe our students and ask our students, but from my adult perspective, it's really those bushes, that created a fort space. We know that the more open-ended a structure, the more opportunities for imaginary play. So if we were to put bushes out there, it could be a house, but it could be a fort, it could be a cave, it could be so many different things. So I think something they're really missing is that open-ended imaginary play with little nooks and crannies to play house and family and superheroes and all those things that they traditionally play.
Nowhere to go to like Walmart or Target and see the kids section. A lot of the toys have changed over the years to be so specific for one thing. Like when you go and you buy a playhouse, like they already built in the mailbox, they already built in the doorbell. Like it lost the kids' ability to create and pretend and imagine what the house could be. And so I think the goal would be to find some solutions that have multi-purposes that also allow for that deep imagination, where it wasn't already like pre-designed and predetermined what it is and what it's used for. Back.
Has the city offered to help fix what was taken?
Great question. You wanna answer that?
You can piggyback with me. They have promised us that there will be more trees planted than were cut down, which is great because one of the biggest losses for us were the trees and the natural component of the Frontier, and of course the shade that comes along with that. As far as to my knowledge, that's one of the only supports that we've really been provided.
When the city owns, and you all can do the research on this, but anytime the city wants to do something, they own a certain percentage of land that they can take. I believe it's called eminent domain. You can take land from others for the betterment of the city. So that might be something to look up and research because that part of that is what happened as well. Yeah.
So I know all of the more fun things, but the more technical things, like how much space and what's the budget for this kind of thing? Because a lot was taken and we don't really have an idea. But
Yeah. So from the square footage, I think we lost about almost half. And we can give you the exact
Yeah.
numbers. We can send them this picture for sure. We have the exact numbers. We've done the square footage because of the accreditation that we have. Per child has to have a certain number of square feet of play outside to determine how many kids can go out on the Frontier at any given time. That is not the case from kindergarten up, but it is the case for our preschool kids. Your second part of the question was budget. So we didn't have budget for this. This was not planned. So that's unfortunate. So we're gonna have to figure out ways to pay, which I think will be really interesting. Whether it, could it be writing a grant? Could it be making a pitch to the CFO and Ms. Lundstrom? She has dedicated about $2,000 to Ms. Canady to help purchase other items for the Frontier. So we could dip into that budget that is not currently spent. Yeah. That.
the opportunity for teachers to sit and gather. So we really, at the preschool level, teachers are really encouraged to be engaging with their kiddos and playing alongside of them. Because the Frontier, although we've lost some square footage, it's still a pretty big space. And so we kind of joke around that we play zone defense on the Frontier. We might be dedicated to a certain area to supervise that space. But it might not be my personal students that are playing in that space, but I'm responsible for supervising this tree fort, or this sand pit, or the big shovels in the sand pit. But I think one thing that the teachers are really, really missing right now is the shade. It is very, very hot out there, and even though we have some sunshades, it doesn't provide the cooling effect that a big tree canopy covered.
We added 2 canopies this year just because of that alone. Y'all know it's like, highs of 90s this week, and outside full sun for a long period of time is just not ideal.
Sorry, excuse me. Is there like a learning space like that you take classes up? Like do you guys want that to be incorporated into it?
I think one of the biggest benefits of having that giant space was that we could take classes out there and do that outdoor learning experience. But because of the accreditation that we have and the square footage per student that is required, we have to now limit the number of students that are out there. And so in order for everyone to have that free outdoor exploration time, it doesn't allow us to have that for every single class along with outdoor learning. But there are other opportunities around campus outside of just the Frontier that I think you might do a little exploring. So we love the idea of bringing learning outside. I think right now, given the Frontier square footage has shrunk, it might have to be a space that we consider outside of that Frontier space.
Kate, will you talk a little bit about Frontier Day, where
Yeah.
kids spent most of the day outside? Obviously, that's gonna have to change a little bit, and then Arts Day.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do, a couple times a year, we have Frontier Days where we spend all day outside. Kiddos dress in clothes that can get messy, and we bring learning outside. So teachers will send out experiences or provocations, things that provoke imagination and play outside on the Frontier, and then the kids are free to explore and engage with those experiences as they wish. And then Frontier Arts Days are when our connections teachers, do you call them connections teachers or enrichment teachers? Like our performing arts, visual arts, Spanish, maker teachers.
These are your electives.
Electives, there you go. They would be in charge of setting up provocations out on the Frontier all around arts integration, connecting it to our learning, but it all does take place outside. This year we're gonna have to get creative and extend it into other pockets of play within the campus.
So you mentioned trees earlier for shade. If we were to replant them, since the city has cut down many, they said that there will be more trees planted than cut down. In the meantime, since trees take a long time to grow, what would we have for shade in the coming years before the trees are fully grown?
Yeah, that's a predicament, for sure. I think that we have created 2 shade cloth, like sailcloth, big pieces to cover some portions of it. The area that really needs to be covered, which is the main portion of it, is there's nowhere to stake because the fence is so old, it could fall down at any moment, we can't attach it to the fence. So a conundrum that we have is how do you put up another sailcloth or a shade when there's nowhere to really put it, and it's really around those tree fort areas, and so it would have to be quite tall. I think the city has a law about cutting down trees and replacing, and if it's not a law, it's something that is known that they do well. I think when anyone buys a piece of property and builds a house, you have to replace a certain number of trees. I don't know if you all have been to other cities before or flown into other cities. Atlanta is unique in that it is more green than other cities. When you drive through a downtown area of New York City, like we might have a park, but there are no trees anywhere else. There's nowhere to walk your dog. Many cities feel like concrete playgrounds rather than natural outdoor playgrounds. If you drive through any area of Atlanta has kept the trees and worked around them. And so so that's something that I know the city of Sandy Springs continues that philosophy as well. Yes.
So with the storage, I know you guys used to have out there, like the sheds, is that still there or is most of it gone?
Great question.
That's a very good question. Those are gone. And it's something that we need. We do need storage out there. Nicole kind of mentioned that the fence was, as they were moving the earth on the other side of the frontier, the fence was shifting because the ground was shifting under it. And so our facilities team has had to do a lot to reinforce the fence to make sure that it is safe. So at this moment, we're really cautious about attaching anything to the fence or putting anything that's like right up against the fence because they're still moving things on the other side. So we want to, that's a constraint that we need to keep in mind. But storage is definitely a concern and something we definitely need.
I know you guys noticed, or I know you guys were talking about like the kids using their imaginations, like playing house, playing family in those azalea bushes. Is there like a specific theme you would like for us to go to, like the imagination theme or the nature type theme that you want us to try and keep when it comes to this frontier redesign we're trying to do?
Yeah, it's a great question.
So the theme for preschool this year is called The Power of Play. And so not only are we making sure that students are having as many opportunities for play-based learning, so much learning in preschool is just about they can do through play and they don't even know they're learning. So that might be something to hold on to is that play theme. The other piece is outdoor play is different depending on the ground. And the frontier is named the frontier because there's so much expanse and space and world of the imagination. So that was an intentionally named space, but it also has no flat surfaces whatsoever outside of something that is constructed like wood. So if a student as young as, let's say, 2 is navigating the ground, they're having to use a different level of brain power and body power than if you're just walking on a flat surface. So they could trip, and they do, trip, fall, wobble over, and it's to gain that core strength. And core strength is needed in the early ages in order to have limb strength, so your legs and your arms, your hands. So kids who have stronger core strength are gonna have better penmanship. They're gonna have an easier time writing, reading, math, all of the academics that come later. So that the ground being misshapen in every single step you take, bumpy really, is very, very intentional at this age. And so we kind of live in a world where there are more cell phones, there's more TV, there's more iPads. We see kids coming to school in the morning watching TV rather than talking. So the frontier is that place where they're engaging in that communication and that back and forth play. And that starts around 2, is that you're not playing just side by side, but you're engaging and playing with somebody else. So all of those developmental milestones and skills can happen outside on that frontier. So it's a really important space for us. And so play, and that theme of play is also like right high up in the center of importance.
How many kids can be on the frontier as of now? And how many do we think we can get on there? And what ages usually like go together at the same time?
Great questions. So we can have up to 117 kids at this current moment. So our NACE accreditation requires 75 square feet per child for outdoor play. So right now that equates to 117 children. And we really do believe in cross-age group play. Right now, we're in the beginning of the year, it's a little harder because the young 2-year-olds are a little nervous about bigger kids being out there because they move faster and they're still learning their body awareness. They're still doing the tripping and the falling. And so right now we have the age groups kind of separated for outdoor play, but as we get into the later in the fall and into the spring, we try and do more cross-age group. Kindergarten and pre-K 5 do play together outside right now, and then pre-K 4 and PK 3 overlap a little bit.
Pre-K 5 and kindergarten students are the same age, but one group of kids just needed another lap of preschool before heading on to kindergarten. So keep that in mind. For some developmental reason, they needed just a little bit more time in pre-K.
Oh, not have again?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
I can think of while you're thinking.
Yeah.
There were two things that didn't really stand the test of time. Some of the wood structures that were thinner and made of less quality wood began to rot pretty quickly into our time there. So one was, there was like this picture an easel, that's like this, but they were stuck in the ground. So kids could write with chalk or wipe off markers. That for outdoor didn't really stand the test of time. There was also a weaving station that required you, like a fenced chicken wire, and it would have strips of ripped fabric, and the kids could like weave designs in there, but the second it rained, all of the stuff would get wet. So that maybe wasn't something else that worked really well. We also had a music garden, and it had lots of things that the kids could like touch, bang, put their hands down, it would make noise as they walked by, which was quite popular. I think a part of that wasn't super popular was where they designed the music garden was right next to the church offices, and I think it was like highly annoying to listen to that banging of music all day long for some of the church employees, but that's just sort of a lesson learned along the way. Anything else that you could add?
I would say the easels, we do have new easels that are out there, and that tends to be very solitary experience, and so it really only allows 1 to 2 kids to do it at a time. So it's good for the kiddo that might want to not be collaborating, but the Frontier is really designed for collaboration, social interaction, social play. So when you think about designing for play, think of that collaborative play. What lends itself to interactions within the kiddos? You guys might have a chance to ask questions.
Adding on to Micah's question about how many people can be out there at once, how many adults can be out there at once and like have to supervise the kids, and how often do the kids get to go outside?
That's a great question. So we have ratios that we have to maintain, so student to teacher ratios, and I can share all of those with you. But the younger the student, the more teachers required per student. So I can share all that with you. So there's not a maximum number of teachers that are allowed out there. There's a minimum. At a minimum, we have to maintain those ratios. So for example, for 2-year-olds, for every 6 2-year-olds, we need 1 teacher. So typically there are 12 kids in a 2-year-old classroom and 2 teachers. If one teacher takes a group of 2 kiddos in to the bathroom, we need to make sure there's another teacher, a 3rd teacher out there to maintain that ratio at all times. So that's a great question.
How does the way the kids use a Frontier changes the way?
That's a great question. I would say the wonderful part about the Frontier being very open-ended is there's endless ways to engage with it. And so like the analogy to the playhouses with the doorbell and the mailbox, that's a very closed-ended experience. The kids don't really have to imagine and recreate, but because there's so many open-ended experiences out there, the opportunities are endless. And I see 1st graders out there that have been playing on it since they were 2 years old, and their play, it becomes more in-depth, and there's more of a storyline going along with it, and there's definitely more collaborative, like group work happening, but they're still as engaged as they were when they were 2 and 3 years old.
Are you using?
You're good. You go, and then you.
Are you using mostly structures from before? You're hoping to like design like a totally new set.
I think when you get a chance to go over there, you'll see that there is a space that's kind of void. There's a lot of structures in this one area, and then there's not much in another area. So I think we're looking to add more to this one area that you'll probably notice when you go over.
No, it's like this rectangle where they dumped tons and tons of wood chips. Wood chips. It's almost like it's so deep it's a beach. Like when you walk through, you're like kind of wading through it. You could take a shovel to it and dig like you would at a beach sand. It's sort of a strange piece, so we have to be thoughtful about what you can and can't do there. Like, it's not a place where you can easily run around. You, like, in deep sand, you kind of fall over. It's a lot of work to do so. Yes?
What is the name of your accreditation?
What's the name of the accreditation?
It's, for short, it's NACE. It stands for the National Association for the Education of Young Children.
Could you say that one more time
Yeah.
for my note takers?
Absolutely. National Association for the Education of Young Children.
And that accreditation, it's a really good question. That accreditation, only about 20% of the schools across the whole country have this accreditation standard. It is hard to get. It is hard to maintain all those standards. So as we go through accreditation cycles, we spent, Kate and I and other admins spent the last year building out student portfolios, program portfolios that we have to submit. And then at some point between the first day of school and February, we're gonna have a surprise visit from a NACE representative to decide whether or not we maintain our accreditation. So it's kind of a big deal. It's sort of that surprise visit, you know, like when someone just shows up to your house for a party and like the kitchen's a mess. It's not really great timing. So we're hoping that it's always good timing.
And there is a NACE assessment booklet that we can share with you all that has a whole section on health and safety. And so those assessment items would be good to be familiar with, so you know about the safety guidelines that are associated with our accreditation. I'm gonna come back to you.
So is there like something that you would like to help the kids simulate workflow in the brain? So like they could like think better and get their thinking out so they're not like, so they're still thinking but just like,
Yeah, it's a great
Well,
question.
what was that?
Something to keep them engaged, get them thinking, problem solving, blood flow, so they're not bored and they're able to channel their energy. So I think about climbing the tree versus climbing the ladder on the tree fort. Climbing the ladder on the tree fort, although at first for a 3-year-old it does take some thought and some motor planning, it is engaging their mind at first. After a little while, it becomes pretty, they can do it basically on autopilot. They know how to climb the stairs. And so they're not having to do as much thinking and problem solving and motor planning. So when we think about open-ended experiences like the tree, is climbing a tree is gonna keep you much more engaged and much more stimulated than climbing a ladder. So I think when you think about open-ended versus closed-ended experiences, the open-ended experience that has endless possibilities, endless ways to do something is gonna create more engagement, less boredom than something that's closed-ended. The research behind the original switch from a traditional playground to the natural playground is rooted in that fact that kids they get bored with structures that only have one purpose, and so they start taking risks that are risky and unsafe. There are some calculated risks that are good as kids learn limits, but the monkey bars get boring after a while, because again, it becomes like autopilot. So then they start climbing on top and jumping off to seek stimulation. And so if there is a natural playground that has lots of open-ended opportunities, they're less likely to take unhealthy risks. They're going to take more healthy risks.
I just thought of several things that used to be on the frontier that didn't. I know you asked that question earlier. At one point, a really big tree on lower campus fell down, and they cut it up into what we call tree cookies, and they were these really big, round pieces, and the kids would like have to work together to like stand them on their edge, roll them, and move them. So the heaviness of the play is important to gain strength and muscle. Another area that was there when we first designed it, that isn't anymore, is that there was these wooden stakes in the ground that looked like a cross, and it came with lots and lots of bamboo poles for kids to make their own forts and teepees and whatnot. And those didn't necessarily stand the test of time, but were super fun, yet also posed a safety risk because they were whopping themselves in the face, not intentionally, but you know, you grab that piece of stick and you don't look behind you to see if somebody's there. And then metal shovels were the third thing that we've intentionally removed from the playground after the third set of stitches. those were removed. So when we think about, because metal obviously is the choice, it's heavier, it doesn't break as often. You all have seen like the wooden, metal shovels versus a plastic shovel at the beach. Like, there's a reason why half of a shovel shows up and washes up on shore. They break all the time. So we're having to navigate some of those pieces, is what's safe to use and how do you protect the area around you. But when you're 1.5, 2, 3, like the last thing you're thinking about is what's going on around you. You're thinking about yourself, very self-centered at that age.
Because, or,
Yeah, you go ahead.
Oh, okay. Because you guys lost a lot of the shade, have you ever run into the problem of the playground getting too hot, and especially during the start of the school year and the end?
Absolutely. We definitely have to limit the amount of time that we're out there when it's really hot because there isn't shade. So that's definitely had an impact.
With your new canopies, is there some worry that later in the year you won't have that sun access? You don't really get to control whether it's good or not.
That's a good idea. Yeah, because trees would naturally lose their leaves and we gain the sunshine when we want the sunshine. I mean, I think that's a great point. Haven't thought that far ahead yet, but yes, it will get chilly, chillier.
Are there any safety concerns, like with the construction around it for the kids?
Yes, definitely. Last year, thankfully the construction has slowed a little bit, but last year there was a period of time where we just couldn't be out there at all. And then towards the end of the spring, late April and May, I was going out daily, sometimes hourly, to check how close the equipment was to the fence to say, okay, it's safe, but if they come any closer, we can't go out, so it has had a big impact in the way that we access the space. Right now, the big machinery is pretty much moved away. So we're hoping that we can be out there all the time right
Think
now.
about when they cut a tree down and then chop it up and then serve it to the wood chipper, the stuff is flying everywhere and it's just unsafe to have it in your eyes. It's also tons of fumes. I anticipate there's gonna be a point again where they're paving, where they're doing work along Johnson Ferry, where there are gonna be like kind of, when the smell of when it's first paved is really strong. But can you imagine being a preschooler and being in a preschool where you have to stay inside all day? Like, no bueno, not fun. So we're trying to avoid that as often as possible.
But one perk is young kids tend to love big machinery, and so they would get up on the tree fort and watch the big machines, which was fun for them when it was from a safe distance. But yeah, the fumes were a concern, debris flying was a concern, and then again, the fence. So every time machinery was up close, we had our facilities team come in to make sure that that fence was secure so it didn't move. Who has not had a chance? Everybody's had a chance. Okay, we'll start sort of back over.
What does the frontier look like now after all the construction, and what parts of the frontier are still there?
Okay, good question. So if you're familiar with the lower campus, if your back is to the preschool building, the frontier used to go from the Johnson Ferry entrance basically to the preschool blue awning door entrance. So it was that whole space. We have now lost a big chunk between Johnson Ferry and the blue awning. So it's that whole big slide over is gone now. It's fenced off and it's becoming a sidewalk and a road. What was the other part of your question?
What does it look like now, and like what parts do you still have?
Gotcha, okay. So we lost the big slide, those climbing trees, the art easels and the weaving boards and the music section. But we do still have what we call a lookout tower and a tree fort, so two elevated structures that are kind of near each other. We have
a small
slide, one pump system in a smaller sand pit.
So we lost another big sand pit and a big water pump that the kids can use and get what they live in.
And then we have this new wood chip area that's, we're like, what do we do in this area?
Also lost a raised garden, a large, when you're thinking about space and how to use space, we determined that a random garden where the kids are planting things maybe isn't the best space when there's not enough room to play. So we filled it in with sand so that there could be another sand pit and diggers and things like that to actually play with. But so now we're thinking like, where could we now have a raised bed garden instead that maybe is a different place on campus? Yeah, yes? Yeah.
Okay. I know you guys mentioned like Art Day and Frontier Day.
Yeah.
And I know you said you had to make a few changes to it. Would there be a possibility you could be able to put those 2 days kind of together if we were able to make something that could appease to that? Like, also you said you lost those art easels and music and stuff like that.
Picnic
Is
tables.
Picnic tables. Is there a possibility that we could make something that can put Art Day and Frontier Day into one thing, so the lower campus doesn't have to lose anything while still getting something new?
I think the days can still happen. Who can use them and for how long will be the thing that needs to be decided to stay in ratio, which is just a preschool thing. That does not affect lower school, but if lower school's out there, it affects how many preschool kids can also be out there. I think it's absolutely possible. I think the beauty of having separate days is there's more experiences outside, and the more times we have these types of events, the goal is that teachers notice, oh my gosh, this is amazing for my kids. I want to bring them outside more often for learning too. So there's this sort of multi-benefit of Arts Day and Frontier Day aren't always planned by the classroom teachers, but by other people, and they're hopefully also professional learning for teachers at the same time, of seeing what else is possible that we hadn't considered before as a part of their classroom rotation.
So I know it's obviously a not super happy moment, but was there anything while the kids were playing that you wanted to improve on, but you didn't have the time or the budget or the opportunity to improve on? Because now's the time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There were, everything that was in the wooden structures that held the toys, the extra toys, once the structures were removed, because we needed the space and they were tired and falling apart, we lost the contents inside. So think about like when you're playing outside and you have like old pots and pans and things like that, like a lot of that stuff we lost. Sometimes in preschool, you'll put out some toys and hide other ones and then swap them out so that the kids kind of forget and it's like they have new materials. So we've lost the ability to store materials in that way, and that would be something that we want to bring back at some point. But the material that you use to keep outside all the time is important, and that's something we learned. Anything wood structure related, it's got a short shelf life.
What is like the ground like out there more like wood chips, or is it more like grass? And are you like if it is wood chips? Are you okay with it? Do you not agree? Like, do you think it's like not safe for the kids, like getting splinters and stuff? Like, what's your opinion?
Those are good questions. So there are different sections. There's lots of different surfaces out there. There's a wood chip area, there's a sand area, and there's a grass area. We are really big proponents of having multiple different surfaces so that kiddos are getting that sensory input. Their sensory systems are still building. So we want them to feel the wood chips, feel the grass, and feel the sand. So there is always the risk of splinters, bugs are in the grass, which is a component that comes along with having a natural playground.
The worm.
But there's worms, yes.
We were literally afraid to make the worm farm because there was no shade. We were afraid the worms were just going to cook.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's not super awesome for the kids to see.
No. So there are different textures and different surfaces out there, and I like them having an opportunity to feel and experience, and like Nicole said, navigate different types of terrain. So the way I run on asphalt is going to be a lot different than the way I run on grass, and then how I run on those thick wood chips. But those are all things that their little bodies have to experience to learn how to navigate different terrain.
So one benefit of having the shade was just there was more space, you could be out there longer. One of the negatives of having shade, and you might see this in your own yards, that anywhere where there's a big tree with tons of shade, the grass won't grow. So the wood chips were also strategically placed in areas where grass probably isn't gonna grow. Once the trees came down, that isn't necessarily the case. Another weird benefit of having the frontier closed is that the grass all came back. It
Mhm.
looks so much healthier than it ever has before, so we gave it time. But what reminded me of your wood chip question is that area does require maintenance, of reestablishing, you have to buy wood chips, put them back down, you have to have a certain grade of wood chips that are safe to use in playgrounds.
So, you mentioned budget, but you didn't mention building constraints. So, what are we able to do? What are we able to replace? What are we able to do? And you mentioned also that the fence itself was kind of old and degrading a little bit. Would it just be better to altogether replace it?
Yes, it would be absolutely perfect to replace the fence. Budget-wise, I'm not sure that that's a huge capital expense, which comes from a totally different budget, than if we were just doing something for $1,000. But yeah, the fence, because we don't know what's to come, replacing the fence right now may not be the best idea. In terms of budget, when you plan a budget basically a year in advance. And part of the board's function at Mount Vernon is to approve or adjust the budget. So when you plan a budget a year before, you can't anticipate some things that happen. And I can promise you, we did not anticipate the frontier looking the way it does right now. So we have to pull from other places for money to be able to do the things that we want to do. For your question about what's allowed, not allowed, we can't attach anything to that fence. That's a full constraint. Aside from that, I don't want to give a ton of constraints. I feel like the world's your oyster right now, like dream big. And then when we think about the rangefinder of what you really, really want, if that's not in the budget, maybe we can work back a little bit to determine something that could be doable. And to me, like, we can dream big and we can make a pitch, all they can say is no, but they might just say yes. And if that's the case, that's pretty exciting.
And
There are also grants that we could write. There's other ways to find money besides taking it from the school.
and collaborating with the church. So
Oh, yes, I did mention that.
Yeah, anything that we do on the frontier, it's church property, and so we just have to, if we were to pitch an idea, we would be pitching it to both the church and the school. Anything we put out there, we run by the church as well.
So the church has to approve it, but they don't pay for it.
What are your thoughts on incorporating like a water station into the budget?
You'll have to come visit and see the water stations that are already there, and then look at what the constraints are for access to water under the ground versus above ground. So.
But we love it.
chairs.
Oh, no, we're good.
Oh, no, we're good.
Thank you. We're used to being
I
on
think
our
the
feet.
water play is really important.
Thank you.
I don't know if you all have ever seen the preschoolers outside, but they come out every day in their little boots. And so they can get wet, they can get filthy, they come with a change of clothes, and then when they get back into the room, they take their little boots off and put their regular shoes back on again. They dump out the sand into a box. There's a whole little system. So when you come visit, you get a chance to see the interest in the water, and there's high interest for sure.
And I will say, to piggyback off that, it is teachers are all in the preschool around water play. However, when they get to kindergarten and they're in uniforms, especially on Wednesdays when they're in their chapel uniforms, it is a little bit harder for the kindergartners and first graders to play in water because they have their nice uniforms on. So we do try and know that that space is used by both preschool and lower school. And so having the ability to turn on and off the water is also important.
When y'all were in kindergarten, you probably came home filthy too. You spill things on you, you get glue on you, you get paint on you. So we are aware that learning is messy. We're okay with that. Wednesdays can be a little tricky though, because those outfits are a little harder to handle. Yes.
Is there any opportunity for sports, or are they not interested at that age?
Not on the frontier, but yes, there's opportunity to play in other places. The NACI guidelines require a fence. At the youngest ages, there's not a ton of interest. you'll see interest in like picking up a stick and whacking it. You'll see like waving it, but that hand-eye coordination isn't quite there yet. Which is why, like, if y'all play at any of the youth sports at Morgan Falls or at NYO or whatever the one is at Ashford Dummy, I'm just blanking out right this second. Murphy Candler. Those don't typically start until they have like 6U as the first age. That's intentional. Yes.
I have two questions. So like, do you think kids would better benefit from like water fountains? So like, if they get thirsty, it's really hot outside, water, do you think they would benefit from water fountains?
For the question was, would the kids benefit from water fountains? If they get hot, or could they play in them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that water fountains, are you asking about water fountains to drink or to play? To drink. I think that would be a luxury. They are really great about bringing their water bottles out. Everybody brings a reusable water bottle every day. And so they're great about bringing their waters out to make sure, because it does get hot, that they stay hydrated with their water. But I mean, I think that would be a great perk to have.
Yesterday, I was helping out in one of the classrooms, and I don't know how often you're around a 2-year-old who doesn't a younger 2-year-old who doesn't have full language yet. So it was this pointing to the boots, and then and you know, like pointing to the boots. So I was like, oh, you want to put your boots on? So we get the boots on, and you know, just getting a young 2 boot on is a challenge all in itself that I haven't done in many years. And then 3 of them don't have walking skills strong enough to walk all the way out there. So then they put 3 in a wagon and all the water bottles in the wagon. And so they pulled 3 of them out there because they're so wobbly still and fall down constantly. It's really cute, but can you imagine how long it takes to get all of those kids' boots on, into the wagon, water bottles, walk out there. It takes forever to walk out there and then play. So they're out there for a quite long time. So water, it would be amazing, especially when it's hot.
And then, do you think like, when you have like a room-scale playground, like for kids who aren't able to walk up the stairs or like,
Will you talk a little bit about, so that's not our only play space. It's just the play space that we're saddest about. But will you talk about maybe some of the others? And when you come visit, we can show you some of the other play spaces too.
Yes, so we do have the Frontier, and then we also have another space that our younger kiddos, pre-K 2 and under, utilize. It's called iExplore. And iExplore is located kind of in an internal courtyard area between the infant rooms and the 2-year-old rooms. And that area is a little bit more, at a quick glance, the ground is much more like what you would see at a traditional playground. It's that reinforced recycled tire surface, so it's rubbery. So as they're learning to walk and they're falling down, they have a flatter surface and a safe place to fall. There are littler sandboxes out there for them to play and have a little bit of sensory exploration, but that is more of a space that's a little less natural and a little more of traditional toys and play structures out there. One constraint that we've had, or one problem that keeps occurring out there is we want those kiddos to be able to access sand and dirt and those sensory experiences. However, there's a drain, and when it rains, that drain gets clogged and causes the space to flood because the 2-year-olds and toddlers are not great about keeping sand in the sand pit. The sand sometimes travels to the rubber surface, which then clogs the drain and causes that space to flood. So if that's a space that you all are investigating and looking at revamping, we'd love your help kind of problem solving that problem of the drain, not draining because of the sand, but also trying to create an experience for our toddlers and young 2-year-olds, and even our infants that are just learning to toddle and walk, for them to experience some natural materials that won't clog the drain. Yeah.
So you mentioned like when they go outside they'll get messy. Is there like stuff you can't do that you would like to because parents are kind of iffy about their kids getting super dirty or something like that?
That's a good question. We really try during our admissions tours to reinforce that we believe play is messy and learning is messy, and that we encourage play clothes and Frontier boots Some kiddos don't like boots, and so we say Frontier, old gym shoes you can wear out to the Frontier. But we want to encourage that play and that sensory exploration, and so we try and reinforce that with our parents as well. I would say one constraint, when I was in the classroom, I had a group of kiddos that were called Team Muddy, and their goal every day was to get as muddy as they could, and I loved it. They needed and wanted that sensory experience, but it was really hard to kind of hose them off before we walked into the building. And so that is something Nicole talked about, Ms. Martin, I'm sorry, talked about our boots are sometimes filled with sand. We need a place to like dump our sand out before we walk into the building. We do kind of need a space to clean the mud off before we walk into the building. Our facilities team doesn't need to be taking care of those messes for us. We really need to take ownership for that. But right now, there's not really a great place to do dumping the sand, cleaning the mud, that kind of thing.
Is there a way that we can like temporarily make some like similar examples of climbing a tree that's like way out of something while the trees grow?
What was that
Maybe.
question?
I love that.
What was that question?
I don't know the answer, but I like the train of thought. Is there something that they could build that would simulate climbing a tree while the trees are growing back? Ideally, that would be amazing.
Something that involves problem solving and motor planning that's like a tree, but a little more open-ended. That's a
Guys,
great.
we have time for about 2 more questions. So if you've got a burning question that hasn't been answered.
Are any kids use the Frontier in the winter?
Yes, all seasons. We go out, we try and encourage our parents, similar to how we say, we're gonna get messy. We say, we're gonna go out when it's drizzling, and even when it's really, really cold. So dress for your day, bring your hat, your gloves. Yeah, we're out there all seasons.
I know you guys also mentioned safety when it comes to this. Do you have like a safety procedure that you want us to help kind of reinforce with the Frontier? Because like I know we talked about broken arms and stitches and stuff like that. Would it be possible that we could add something to the Frontier that could kind of make it easier for teachers to access like a safety box or first aid kit?
Yeah, we do have safety guidelines that we can absolutely share, that you can look at. Anything that is within the NACE requirements is what we are abiding by. I don't know that we have additional safety things. Aside from, once we opened up that rectangular area I was telling you about, it's like kind of a pit of nothing right now. There is a nut tree of some sort, whether it's pecan, whether it's hickory, and we have kids with tree nut allergies. So that they drop at certain times of the year these pods on the ground. The younger you are, the more likely you are going to touch it, put it in your mouth, and play with it. So from a safety perspective, that is something that we're paying attention to and trying to figure out. We have 3 students who have tree nut allergies of the age who play outside on that Frontier. That's a to be continued problem that we're working on right now, and we've called all of their families welcome as well.
One thing that I see being when the shovel incidents have happened, it's when there tends to be 10 kids huddled in this one area because they all want to be at the one water pump. So right now when I walk out there, what I experience is kids are huddling around these sand pits and the tree fort, but there's nobody down in the wood chip area because there's nothing to do, and kids don't know how to engage in that space. And so when there's too many kids in a small location, then accidents happen. Kids get bumped, kids get hit. So I think if we can create experiences that spread them out, we'll have fewer bumping. And, yeah. Right.
Let's go ahead. Let's hold your questions because you're going to get to go over and tour, and you can ask some more questions then. But we don't want to wear out our guests.
That's okay.
With about 100 questions. If you'll debrief with the group, I'll talk to you guys about a good time to come over.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, quick debrief. Quick debrief. Y'all have been doing great. I need your attention for just a little bit. While it's fresh in our minds, we like to do a little debrief, and I'm going to try to keep the volume as low as possible. Okay, so I'm going to give y'all some quick feedback, and to be honest, note takers, I did most of my observations here in the questionnaires. but what I did observe of y'all is, for the most part, we were taking notes the whole time. There were a few moments where I heard very key signifiers coming from them, and a signifier is like, I care about this thing, we care about this thing, and I heard it, but I didn't see a lot of y'all hear it because I didn't see you writing. Even the smallest, tiniest little detail of what they might have said could be a key to unlocking a big problem. So it's important to stay active with our note-taking the whole time. And that's pretty much all I have for you guys. I did see your attention look really, like you guys were looking up for the most part. There weren't a whole lot of heads on hands, and that was really good. All right, questioners, I got a lot for you. I'm gonna frame my feedback with rose, bud, thorn. You guys familiar for the most part with rose, bud, thorn? It makes intuitive sense. A rose is like some great thing that I saw. A bud is some like thing that I saw that had a lot of potential but could use some work. And a thorn is just something that we need to work on addressing right now. So I'm gonna start with the thorns here so that we can end with roses. So volume. Some of your questions, almost no one could hear unless they're right next to you. That's a problem. We need to be able to all hear your question because note takers are recording it, and if they can't hear you, they can't record the amazing question or answer that they have. Overlapping questions. A lot of y'all were doing, this is your very first interview. No one's taught you to interview, so I wanted to preface all of this, and I forgot by saying I'm really proud of you guys because you showed up, you were active listeners, especially at the beginning. But with interview questions, it seemed like a lot of us weren't totally listening to what some other people were saying because there was a lot of overlap. Particularly, did y'all notice that Miss Canady had to repeat the same things about the active learning and the trees instead of the monkey bars? That was a result of our questions not paying attention to each other's questions. Does that make sense? And that's okay. This is a learning moment. And then we asked a few closed questions, which are not evil. Closed questions are great. But in this particular case, we only have them for just a little while, and we need to get as much great information as possible. And our closed questions resulted in a couple of answers we could have looked up. Answers we could have observed when we go there Thursday. For example, how big is the playground? What's the area that was lost? We are literally going to see that with our eyeballs on Thursday. We wasted a little bit of time asking questions that had direct answers. This is my favorite thing, and I think Ms. Wilcox taught me this trick. An open question, I want you to open your arms wide. Yeah. This is also a good stretch.
Everybody do it. If you're not doing it, you're wrong. Everyone do it. Open your arms
Big
wide.
open question, guess what? An open question is going to let
opens your lungs up.
so many potential answers in. So many potential answers. All right, now a closed question. Very few answers could possibly fit in here. Okay? So I heard a lot of you say, oh, an open question or a closed question is just yes or no answer. That's only partially true. A closed question could be an answer you could look up online. Google or
14.
Yeah. Or I like sandwiches. Right? A sentence. An answer that Google could be boom, this is the answer. An open question is one that prompts an interviewee, a client, to give up a lot of great gold mine of information, right? Okay. And also, let's go to buds. So this is stuff that I saw lots of potential. I loved this part. I saw a lot of you guys I saw the spark in your eyes. You had solutions ready to go in your pocket. I even saw some sketching of ideas, okay? While this is such a beautiful thing, and I'm so proud of you for doing this, it's too early for that. It is too early for you to be coming up with ideas and asking questions with solutions built into them. Do you think it would be a good idea to do this? Guess what? Not only is that a closed question, yes, I think that is a good idea. But it is also limiting, and it also skips through steps. We are in the discover phase. We are not even in our define phase, right? We're still discovering. And if we start thinking of solutions, we limit ourselves right off the bat. So I want us to work a little bit on some discipline here, and that is holding the reins on our ideas for solutions so that we can be more open-minded about our client. All right, and that's basically all of my bud feedback has to do with this. our clients need to feel understood. And if we don't, like, if we start jumping to solutions, they're not gonna feel like they're paying attention, we're paying attention to them. I saw lots of hands up while they were talking. Again, love the enthusiasm. You had an idea, you had a question, you don't wanna forget it, that's great. That's what our notebooks are for. If you're going like this while someone's talking, what does that mean? You're not paying attention, you're already thinking about what you're gonna say next. And that's what Ms. Fancher was saying. Don't think about what you're already gonna say next. Embrace the moment that you're in right now with your client who's giving you great answers. All right, here's my thorn. We were active listeners at the beginning, and within about 10-15 minutes, I saw a lot of this. And I saw a lot of this. Okay, I know that all of you are angels and you really, really do care about what's going on here, because who wouldn't care about helping a bunch of tiny babies have a bunch of fun, right? You guys are here for it, but your faces are saying otherwise, and that's feedback you've gotten a couple of times now. From not just me, not just Fanch, there's a lot of like, I'm just being honest with you guys. I kind of wish that camera was facing out here so you can see how you look to the person who's just walked 15 minutes over here to spend time with us, right? The gum smacking, that, I have to be harsh with you because otherwise you won't learn. It looks disrespectful, it looks like you're bored, and you look like a typical teenager. And you're not typical teenagers. You're here to change the world, you're here to do big things. You're here to show people that we're different and we want to help them. So like, even if you think it's like you're acting, like it's probably not as exaggerated as you think. So let's try and fix our faces a little bit more and keep up the energy, not just at the beginning, okay? The last bit is, that is it, I think. A couple more roses, I forgot roses, okay? I heard building on other people's questions. So I heard,
It's time for advisory.
it's advisory time?
Can't you hear the music? You can't, because it's
I
not very
can't.
loud.
Anyway, you guys did great. We will, we'll reach out to you on Slack if we need to do anything, okay? This was good time. Oh yeah, put your pens in, you can keep your notebooks, put your pens on the table on your way out. Good work, y'all. Yeah. Thanks, Greg, good job. Yeah.
Where did things go? Alright. Advisory? Yeah.
Let's do our other class. We have another ID class later.
That's right. If we could get them to help.